Good afternoon. I wanted to do a quick just chat, GM talk. Had a good session last night in Mothership. Justin ran us in the Dead Planet module. So if you watch that, be careful. There could be spoilers. We discuss some things after session that could also be spoilers for anybody expecting to play in that module. Might want to be careful watching any of those episodes. I won't recap it for exactly that reason. I will say the system is D100, roll under, very intuitive. Justin, I agree with Justin when he says it feels very old school versus, say, Alien, which is using the Mutant Zero system. Totally agree with that. It is intuitive. It's very simple. Pick up the D100, roll under your skill or under your attribute, and success. There's some opposed checks. That adds a little layer. There's panic and stress, or I should say stress then panic. That adds a layer. And then, of course, there's even stuff like hit location that can come up in combat. Those things layer the simple intuitive system. That just adds another step. But the game is very intuitive, very, very simple to do. And it was great. Anyway, for those of you thinking about Mothership, I would say, I don't know what it costs, etc. We have the player's guide. Justin, I think, has the first beta book or something. I'm not certain what all Justin has. I know he owns some modules. Reality is, I think it's a pretty cool, simple sci-fi engine, right? And I do believe, at least the module Justin was running us through, does capture certainly that sense of sci-fi horror. However, I mean, you could present that game, in a different kind of flavor genre. I could see you using Mothership for a Blade Runner type game, right? So, but it definitely works for that style of that genre. I think it really does. So, anyway, thank you, Justin, for doing that for us, and hopefully we'll have a chance to get back and finish this cliffhanger, right? Okay, I had talked about this. I don't know if you guys can see it. I don't have my camera. So there it is. I can't see myself. I have it turned away, so I'm not preoccupied by the image I see. So anyway, I picked this up. When I came back, the only thing I've purchased in the last 11 months is this OSR, and of course this campaign setting. The campaign setting written by the gentleman from Trollord Games that do Castles and Crusades. However, this is system agnostic. It's just an epic world with an epic map. And when I say epic, I kid you not, it's pretty freaking amazing. It's gigantic. And my goal when I came back, as I said very clearly, I wanted to do really two things. First off, coming back, I don't have plans on trying a lot of other systems right now as a GM, as an actual somebody running games, was to get back to OSR, traditional fantasy OSR game, and to test play Dark Age of Man. Okay. So I did mention that I would probably go through this and talk about what it is I do like about this particular book. I've said this before. I try to now play games rules as written. I try my best not to ignore rules. I try my best not to throw out rules. I try my best to run games as written. And I've been doing that now for the last 4 or 5 years. It is quite literally, I won't say an obsession of mine, but it's important to me. That doesn't mean we don't make rulings. So there'll be people who say, man, you just can't do that. That's just, you don't have to. No, you don't. I still have to make rulings. Every game requires rulings. But if those some of you may recall, I've talked about why I would maybe pick up this OSR versus other OSRs, because I want to run a game without feeling like I have to make any changes. So therefore, I can run this rules as written without feeling like I need to take something out or add something. This is that perfect OSR for me when I run an OSR fantasy setting, because I won't have to change anything in here. I will have to define movement because he doesn't define player character movement, but twice in the book he refers to player character move rules and movement rules, yet nowhere are the player. So I think somehow in his editing he failed to define in the rules player movement, but then refers to it in the monster section and somewhere else about referring to PC movement rules, and they just aren't here. So I think somehow in their editing they took out or left out movement rules, but yet they refer to those rules. You don't need them. It's just not relevant. I mean, it's anybody who's played an OSR old D&D will figure out how to do simple movement, either in Theater of the Mind in 10-foot movements or how to use it as inches on a mini maps. No sweat. So what it is very fun about this is it's clear, concise, and he's not apologetic. There's no apologies for saying make it yours. There's no apologies for saying there's GM fiat here. Surprise is a fine example. The GM should decide if you decide surprise. However, if you feel necessary, roll the dice. He makes it clear there's no morale, right? Morale, the GM should decide when the creatures run away, right? I've always done that. It's like, come on, I mean, these goblins are being routed. They're not gonna necessarily stay here and fight to the death. So I do that anyway, right? So I think a lot of it is very intuitive. It's very old school in the sense that I think many of us already do these things, right? He's not apologetic about GM fiat. He's not apologetic about saying it's your game as GM. You make it your game. You treat it your way. There's some things in here that I love. The fact, like Basic Fantasy, there was no procedure for combat. Basic Fantasy pretty much defines it very simply, right? This does the same. There is a procedure for initiative, surprise, initiative, how to handle initiative, if there's a tie, etc. But outside of that, it's just once you declare that you're using melee or shooting arrows or casting spells, you just do it. There's no order. You don't roll the dice to see how far they are away from you. There's no Moldvay procedure of combat here, which is one of the reasons we all love White Box, right? So it's one of the reasons we all love White Box, Sword and Wizardry White Box, and many of the OSRs don't define a combat procedural round that you must cast spells first, then you must shoot missiles, then you must move, then you can melee, right? They don't define that. If Dale wants to go first and he says, I'm going to run across the room and swing my sword at the goblin, there it is. Eloy can go first or Eloy can go second, etc., etc., etc. So there's just no concern about when you cast and when you don't cast, etc. I appreciate that very much. The other thing I greatly appreciate, again, holdover from Sword and Wizardry or OD&D. Sword and Wizardry will be what I refer to because he basically refers to OD&D and Sword and Wizardry, is the single number save, right? So as you level up, your save number gets better. What I love about that is I like to use the save for all checks, right? So again, they don't define saves versus Dragon Breath. It's just a save number. What I love about that is, let's say Dell is trying to bully the blacksmith into telling him who bought the sword that he's after, and the blacksmith denies it, and then Dell attempts to intimidate via, and we can say, okay, Dell, make a charisma check to see if you can convince this 6'7" blacksmith that you're a threat, right? And so Dell rolls his save. So say he's a first level cleric, he has a 14, his charisma's +1, he would roll that, and if he rolls 15 up, maybe the blacksmith says, you're a pain in the arse, I'll tell you to get you out from under my feet, right? Not because he's scared, but because he just wants him get out of my damn tent, right? Okay, so we can use the save, and as you level up, you'll just get better, right? So we can imagine as you level up, you're getting stronger, you're getting better at riding horses, you're getting better at jumping pits, you're getting better at building camps, you're getting better at every possible thing. The save can become that universal number that represents your competency as you go up in all checks. Then we use attribute modifiers when we call on that save. That's what I do. I love the fact that it's presented here with a single save. I love the sub-classes, right? Magic User, there's Druid, there's Illusionist, there's Pyromancer. Those are all specialized. They all require certain prerequisites to qualify to be those, and they are just all different enough to actually make it very cool to have a Pyromancer, very cool to have a Druid, very cool to have a Healer, right? So we got Clerics and we have Magic Users as healers. So there are magic user specialists, healers. Very cool. The difference is they can't wear armor, but they can wield any one-handed weapon. So imagine a healer, magic user who's also a sword, wielding a sword, right? I'm thinking that's a great way for somebody to be a healer that's not a cleric, right? Okay. So the things that he does make notes on, the things that he does kind of recommend, suggest, all things that I'm 100% in agreement with, all things that I would ultimately point the players to, that I would ultimately use. I wouldn't feel I have to change anything to run this game out of the box. That's why 3d6 in order, right? Also, I'm planning on running, when I start again, running consistently, it'll be campaigns, probably small campaigns, 4-session series, 6-session series, etc. And I want players to fully invest in the character, and I like his death rules here, right? So it allows people to relax a little bit about the lethality of the game. It's still lethal, but they're going to be able to relax a little bit about as first level characters. They're going to be able to invest themselves in the characters a little bit. They're going to have a chance to survive and succeed a little bit, and yet the game can still be just as daunting and terrifying and dangerous. But I want the players to feel like when they make that character, they invest a little bit in that character, that it's going to take a little more than just hitting 0 to die, right? He also offers many ways to keep you alive: binding wounds, traditional healing, and then of course we have multiple classes that can heal now. The cleric can heal, and so can the healer can heal, right? So I love the fact that this is kind of simple OSR with some things defined, ultimately, and things that I would like to see in a game, like the assassin class, the ranger class, these classes that I don't have to write or add to white box, right? I really do enjoy it. There's just this one thing that's kind of weird. He refers to movement rules in 2 places in here, yet I don't find movement rules defined anywhere. So it was, I think it was overlooked in their final edits. Somehow they don't have any movement rules, which is fine, because I theater of the mind. It's all relative to what makes sense, right? Okay, no reaction tables, right? No morale, no rolling for morale, no reaction tables. There is a loyalty, henchman loyalty table, etc. Really dig this. He talks about encumbrance and what encumbrance should mean, but he doesn't define how it affects movement. He doesn't define how it should adversely affect players, but keep in mind that they can only carry so much, and there should be some kind of issue for carrying too much weight. I totally agree with that, but we don't define it. But when I say to Joe, you're carrying 300 pounds here, Joe, you can only carry 160 pounds. I'll let you carry it, but you're gonna lose all initiative rolls. You're gonna be at a minus in combat. I can very quickly, make rulings so Joe knows there's a price to pay for carrying 140 pounds more than he's really capable of, right? And so I'm okay with that. I've been playing that way my whole life. So I like a book that kind of does that. Okay. And I don't dislike his unapologetic tone. I kind of dig that he makes no bones about it's our game and it's your game and make it the way you want to make it. I just dig that. I respect somebody who doesn't apologize for what they're about. You don't have to be a belligerent a-hole about what you like, etc. But don't apologize, because you like experience and killing and experience creating. Killing and money, killing and gold, killing and collecting gold create experience points. Unapologetically, that's just the way it is. Take it or leave it. But you're free to change it if you so feel. Right? Okay. Then, of course, I'm looking at this. This is dense. This is frickin' remarkably dense. It's fantastic, and I will use it. But ultimately, when I start sessions, I'll put people in a particular space, give them an idea where they're at and aired, and they'll be in regions. I mean, the world is so gigantic. We could play forever in just one peninsula of the game, and most likely I will do that. I will put them in one particular area. I will make sure they understand certain things about that area, and then we go, right? I will do it naive narrator, meaning once I put them in the space, I set them up in a setting or a village or whatever the start is, or the city from a book, or a kingdom from the book, whatever the case may be. Then, of course, I will use what I've been using. I have not run a session in a year and a half, 2 years, that was not naive narrator, right? On Dale's birthday was the first time I ever used naive narrator and random seeds. He's 52 now. In March he'll be 53. So I have not run a session non-naive narrator in almost 2 years, right? Almost 3 years. Excuse me, 2 years plus. I won't do it, because I don't want to know, right? I want to not know where we're going, what we're about, how the players can achieve success. Zero. I want to know the setting. I want to know the key players. I want to know the ramifications of potential war. I want to understand the world as a GM, and I want to understand the characters and their motivations. But I don't want to know anything that would say you can't stop the king that way, Joe. Joe, good idea. And if I wasn't, if I was, I don't want players to feel their plans or their idea of how they might affect change in the world is stopped, because that's not the answer, right? The dragon can only be killed with the golden sword of Methuselah, And it says in the module that's the only way they can kill the dragon, right? And therefore they spend, ultimately it might take them 4 encounters with the dragon before somehow, some way they learn that there's only one magic key to open the door. There's only one magic sword to kill the dragon. There's only one way to do this thing. Not my ideal kind of gaming. I want players to feel free to figure out how to handle the problems of the world. And the best example I can say is you're in front of a locked door. Players want to unlock the door. They're going to pull their hair out trying to get that door open. So let's recognize there are very clever ways they can get that door open. And let's not say there's only one way to get that door open, right? Now there can be doors that flat out are the treasure vault door, whatever. There can be doors that are inaccessible without the special password or whatever. I get that. But when it comes to adventuring, it's best not to put an impassable door in front of an adventuring party, right? Unless you don't want them going any further, right? That's what that amounts to. So, with that being said, of course, there'll be a lot of. So I will be using my style of GMing, naive narrator, random seeds, no matter what I run in future. I mean, even if I choose to run some Savage Worlds, which I've been debating, I really have yet to. I think I've run one. Again, I think I've run 2 sessions total locally over the years, and it's been 10 years, Savage Worlds. I did look at Scott's module. I think I did, it might have been just one. It might have been just Steve I was able to do with that, and that's why I didn't do a video on it or haven't really talked much about it, because I think it was the only person I could get to a local session was Steve, so it was kind of a one-on-one thing. And then, of course, I did a bank heist session, but again, it was one half of one night. We were all together, and I don't recall much as to whether, how it went. And I have not looked at Savage Worlds in 3 years, 4 years, but I've been debating on maybe trying to run a little Savage Worlds. But if I do, it will be from this seat of my pants, naive narrator, right? They will know the situation. They'll know they're in Chicago, 1939. They'll know they're in the Great Depression. They'll know it's Prohibition or whatever, 37 Prohibition. They'll know they're in Chicago. They'll know the mob is involved in the whole culture of Chicago. They'll know their roles as a boxer and a promoter or whatever. You know, that's just how we set it all up. But then we have no restraints on the players. They have a problem to resolve. Let them figure out how to resolve it. They'll pass or fail based on what they encounter and how they choose to act, and whether dice rolls betray them or not, or whether they run into a tough enemy, or they run into, let the dice dictate whether they pass or fail, right? Let the dice dictate the direction of the game. Let players play, right? That's the goal, right? For me, it's huge. Okay, anyway, so that's kind of where I'm at. Dark Age Event's come a long way. Last week, I devoted 3 complete days to proofreading, editing, writing, proofreading, editing, writing, proofreading, editing, writing. I told the guys I'm not going to look at it now for 2 or 3 days. I need to get completely away from it for 2 or 3 days. It is close. In my opinion, it's close. We could add some more setting detail. Dell's talked about wanting to add a little more about the Sea Peoples and a little more about clans of Ireland. So we might do that. We might add a little more to the setting world. So it just, as Dell said, not only do we have this kind of setting, but maybe we should put a few more pieces that would inspire players to think a particular way, right? There's a village called, whatever, and it happens to be a crossroad of lots of merchants and traders. Why this place is so popular is it's where it sits among 2 major cities, and that just a little bit of that setting detail might inspire players to become traders or merchants, right? Not just warriors, not just on a mission to kill things, but maybe I could be a trader in this world, and they can exist as a trader and a merchant, and then they'll run into things that make their lives an adventure, right? Like Bilbo Baggins. He doesn't go on adventures until Gandalf puts a mark on his door. Now Bilbo's on an adventure, right? That changes his life for good and ill, right? So that's kind of that. And then of course, I am looking forward to getting back into using the D20 OSR formula. I'm just going to start calling these OSRs the D20 old school formula. But this particular book, because I feel like I can run this rules as written with plenty of room for freedom for the players, and not a lot of rules to restrict the players or me outside of what is defined, and that is a nice way to get back into the OSR GM seat for me. And then I'll worry about what I run that's outside those realms. Once I don't want to overwork or be in a position where I feel pressured to do a lot of things. I don't have the desire to do right now. Right? All right, what else? I think that's it. I think that's really kind of talked about. I would have gone through this a little more detail, but I'm like, wait a minute, we don't have to, right? Those are the reasons I really dig it. I dig the attack matrix table. I dig there's no morale score. I dig there's no reaction check. I dig that we have a save number that gets better as you level up, because that becomes the simple way to recognize your competency in all kinds of skills, checks, actions, right? Trying to intimidate the dwarves or trying to intimidate the goblins. We can use a save check modified by charisma, blah, 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 blah. We have the paladin, we have the ranger, the assassin, we have the druid, we have the illusionist, we have the pyromancer, we have the healer. It's loaded with options for, and of course, we have a little more chance to keep characters alive, binding of wounds, healing, and 2 classes that have healing abilities. Actually, and the paladin, I believe, has, right, I forgot about the paladin. So the paladin also has lay on hands, I think, right? So we got 3 classes that can keep people alive. And then, of course, we have the fact that you don't die till you hit -10 in combat. And I just think that relaxes players to invest in the character. It allows them to say, okay, I'm hoping the guy I'm making here is going to get to see the 4 sessions. And I bring this up because normally when I campaign, we go hardcore 0 dead, and I personally love that. But what I found in this last 11 months away, as I reflected, I've spent many years doing that, and I've been playing with people who are totally okay with that. But there has been some lacking in at my tables over the last few years when they ultimately don't invest. They aren't too invested in why they would think about the name of this character and who this character is and what this character's motivations might be and why this character might want to, they might want to play this character. And so I think it helps just to, and then players know that if I say, hey, we're going to do a 4-session mini campaign, and why 4? Because 4 is something we can do, and we can all invest in a character. Hopefully they don't die in that 4 sessions, right? And it can just be a mini campaign. Again, we'll be naive ultimately about what they're going to achieve. Campaigns imply that there's some epic thing you're going to achieve. My campaigns have never been based on some epic thing you're going to achieve. They've always just been continuing characters in a continuing world that evolves and changes. That's one reason I'm going to use this. I'm not going to concern myself with whether the world's evolving in the far reaches of the map, whether what's happening in the world's totally irrelevant to the characters. They're not there. They won't know unless they're there, right? So I don't worry about anything except what's happening around them. So I'm completely naive, even around what's not happening 52 miles up the road to some degree, right? And that's it. So anyway, thanks for listening. Everybody out there have a great remainder of the weekend, and keep your heads up. At some point, I am going to. Many of you may remember this when I had my channel years ago, and I was running a lot of basic fantasy. I always opened up my sessions to the community. I always invited complete strangers to have a chance to come and play, a chance to try it, or a chance just to play with us, or a chance. I've always been that. Was how I met Josh. That's how I met Dell. I invited Dell to the basic fantasy sessions. Never met Dell prior to that. And I've met a lot of great friends and players. Mark, Eric. I mean, these guys were total strangers, and I open my doors and I say, here's a chance to come play, come meet me, come try what I do, etc. Come play basic fantasy or whatever it was. And I can say I've had more unbelievable success inviting strangers and people for a try than I've had bad experiences in the online community. Yeah, I've just been blessed. So what the gist of that is, many of you remember that's part of how I am in the community. I am very often willing to accept and let people sit at my table. With that said, that means at some point here I'm going to put a link to my Discord. I have an OSR server on Discord that I've already invited a handful of friends into, and there's been no discussion yet. I haven't put up anything to let them know that we may or may not invite them to run stuff. But the point is, the reason I set it up is at some point I will start posting in there, and I will start preparing to run this particular game in this particular setting. You won't have to know the game. You won't have to know the setting. It'll all kind of just come to you as you play. Obviously, I can make pre-gens. If somebody says, "Man, I'd like to have a ranger," I'll be able to supply a ranger or something. And you name them, and you come up with your personality. Okay, not a problem. But I will probably put a link. So I'll put up a video at some point opening my server to the public and allowing people to then send me come into my server, my OSR server on Discord, and that's where I'll organize sessions. That's where I'll organize, and we can keep track of this stuff. So that'll be how I go about this. I refuse to use Facebook. I don't want to use the social media stuff. I left Facebook once. I came back, and it was nice to see everybody, talk to everybody, and spend a year or so reacquainting and sharing. But Facebook, in general, for me, is an absolute no. I am. It's just not my thing. So again, for those who love Facebook, it's not again. Don't take it personally. It's my limitations on how I want to go about communicating with the world. So I will use Discord for that mostly. So anyway, that's just a heads up as to what's going to be coming. I won't start seriously thinking about running these sessions until after August 1st, and that's when I'll start preparing a couple of sessions, maybe a mini campaign, and then I'll put up that video, and I'll open the door for individuals to come to the server, and then they can get in and we can do a little bit of online gaming, right? So, okay, I may or may not use Roll20 when I do that. It depends on whether I'm going to use video, right? We'll maybe use voice. I may use Roll20 and everybody in it needs a microphone, but I may not require video, right? And if I use Roll20, it'll be for the ease of sharing some information and maybe scribbling out tactical maps, because I'm not a map user, I'm not a map and mini guy. So it'd be one of those things where I would draw a circle and I'd say, okay, here's the tent, here's the river, you're here, the orcs are here, and they can just conceive what I'm talking about better tactically. Theater of the mind, but also there would be dice to use there, plus we could keep character sheets, etc., and people can drop in and out of this world campaign map, right? So anyway, those are kind of my thoughts. I don't know where I'll end up, but just so everybody knows, up to date, that's it.